Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Kevin Satterlee.
Thank you. Thanks, Esteban. Congratulations to the 10 of you. My favorite day of work every year is the first day of fall classes. Hands down, my favorite day at work. On the first day of the fall term every year, I gather all my department heads and all my key staff, and I make them walk out on the quad. We stand there in the grass, and I ask them to look around. I ask them to watch as the students pass during the first class change in the morning. I tell them, look at those over 20,000 students. Those students are coming here to learn. Those students are coming here to get an education. And more fundamentally, those students are coming here to better their lives. And then I tell them, and whether I'm talking to one of my architects, one of my lawyers, one of my landscapers, a parking attendant, a trademark manager, a security officer, whether it's management or clerical support staff, I tell them the same thing, and that is this. Your only mission, your only job here is to support these students to get an education. Everything else you have in your job description pales into comparison that the only reason we are all here as an institution is to help these students get an education. Embrace that mission, and if you lose sight of that mission, we will have failed our students. So, today, I have the distinct honor and privilege of standing in front of 10 people who serve as a testament to that mission. And tomorrow, I get to call my staff and tell them they're succeeding. Because if we can produce graduates of this caliber, if we can produce students with this kind of potential, then we are doing something right here at Boise State University. But then, in all fairness, I've known for a while we're doing something right at Boise State University because I'm standing here in front of you. I'm a first-generation college student. I'm an Idaho native, fourth-generation Idaho native, but the first in my family to go to college. I grew up in North Idaho, about as far as you can get from here and still be in the state. The Priest River and the Priest Lake were my backyard swimming pool. I have a photo, several actually, that I keep on the wall in my office. It's of my grandfather's logging operation, pulling logs out of the woods by horses, and then an old tractor logging truck. Remind myself where I came from. My mother made sure I went to college, though. She said I was smart and I needed to go to college, and she made sure it happened. And how I got to Boise State, I'll tell you in a moment. But I came to Boise State from small town rural Idaho, and I came to the big city of Boise, because to me, it was the big city. My first game, sitting in the student section at Bronco Stadium, was the first ever game played on the blue turf. The summer before I arrived, they tore out the old turf and they put in an innovation. And as all of you know, innovation has become the hallmark of this institution. But in the fall of 1986, I was a new freshman living in Towers, and on September 13th, I went to the stadium, and I was in the stands for Boise State versus Humboldt State University, and we beat them 74-0. I haven't forgotten that. Now, my Boise State that I came to did not award a single doctoral degree. We had none at the time. My Boise State had an actual operating Boise schools, elementary school on campus in what is now the Public Affairs Arts West building. Outside of it, where now sits the Interactive Learning Center and the multi-purpose classroom, was the playground for the elementary school. And if the kickballs rolled across the sidewalk, the kids weren't allowed to go get them, so the college students had to throw them back into the play yard. My Boise State was hemmed in by old hotels that were getting pretty run down. The housing options on campus were pretty limited. The concept of research labs on campus was pretty unheard of. But 4 years later, in the spring of 1990, I got a great education, and I was named a top 10 scholar. I'm still proud of that to this day. Now, the lessons I learned at Boise State in my education have served me very well in my career. I was in a meeting once with one of Idaho's governors, and I was explaining to the governor about the balance between the governor and the legislature, and it was the basic separation of powers lesson to help the governor understand how the Public Records Act is applicable to the office of the governor. I learned those lessons as a political science student here at Boise State University, and I used them to explain some of the rules of the road to the Idaho governor. I also recall explaining to a different governor and a Speaker of the House together about how the executive powers in Idaho are not all vested in just one governor, like at the national level with the president or in many states. But in Idaho, the executive power is split among 7 different statewide elected officials and 2 constitutionally appointed boards because Idaho became a state at the height of the populist movement of the 1890s. And the populist movement was about spreading power around amongst different groups and different people rather than consolidating power in the hands of the few. That fact alone, and the way Idaho's constitution set up our state, limits some of the executive power of the governor in Idaho. Again, a basic political science lesson I learned here. What you learned here, you will take with you for life. And your Boise State of today is far ahead of the Boise State I had when I was here. So what you take with you will only be better. A lot's changed in the 28 years since I set foot on this university as a freshman. Boise State for you started with a Bronco football team that had already won 1 Fiesta Bowl, was on its way to a 2nd. Your first game in the stands might have been when we defeated Oregon in 2009 on the blue, or Oregon State in 2010 when we defeated them on the blue. Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, the blue is not kind to the state of Oregon. Your Boise State has 8 doctoral programs. Your Boise State has entire buildings and entire floors of other buildings devoted to research in the sciences. In addition to your outstanding faculty, you have an astronaut educator in residence. You have corporate CEOs giving lectures in your classrooms. You have champions of commerce in your classrooms teaching you the tools of the trade. You have artists and Hollywood filmmakers in your classrooms. Do not ever, the rest of your life, let anyone tell you that you didn't get as good an education as they did because they went to some fancier school. In over 20 years of my professional life, I have never once felt shortchanged by the education I got at Boise State, and yours was better than mine. Just last week, I was in court against 2 partners and an associate from a very big, very fancy Washington, D.C. law firm. And those gentlemen went to a fancier universities than I went to. We spent the day in front of the judge. And at the end of the day, the score was Boise State 2. Fancy Eastern Law School guys 0. So my Boise State had 10,000 students. Yours has 22,000. So what does that say about you? Well, it tells me, and I was not a math major, so you'll all correct me, I'm sure, by the time I'm done. It tells me you are not the top 10% of this university. It tells me you're not the top 1% of this university. It tells me you're not the top 0.1% of this university. It tells me that you're somewhere around the top 0.045% of this institution. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's not worthy of respect and not worthy of a round of applause, I don't know what is. And whether you correct my math later or not, it's still worth that round of applause. Boise State is going to confer 2,500 degrees next month at graduation. But the 10 degrees awarded to you are the 10 I have the most faith in. They're the 10 I'm most proud of. And they're the 10 I have the most hope in that you're going to go out and do great things. And one of those great things I'm going to suggest to you now. Make sure you stay part of the family. Now, you don't have to work here. You can go out and do lots of great things. But stay connected to Boise State. Become a lifelong advocate of this institution, even if you're doing it from somewhere else. Remember, at Boise State, we're still outnumbered by our sister institutions. Despite all of our successes, we remain the feisty younger sibling. We remain the younger sibling that fights for our well-deserved respect. Every one of our successes we earn here. We're not given. If you stay with us, we can move mountains. And I mean that literally. Let's move earth and put in the right facilities and buildings to continue this place. Let's move this university forward on its strategic rise, and every time there's a rise to prominence at this institution in the future, then so rises the value of that diploma you're going to get handed next month. Look at what we've accomplished around here in the last 20 years with people like me staying part of the Bronco family. Imagine what we can do if you stay part of the family. I've read your bios. Medicine, engineering, a sociologist helping with the working class, nanomechanics, biologists, chemists and musicians, economists and debate champions, and teachers. And even those who don't want to be teachers talk about taking their knowledge and spreading it to others. This is like the most noble of all professions coming together. You are going to be fantastic ambassadors for Boise State University. If the 10 of you stay on our side, we have no limits at Boise State. So, back to my earlier story. In my top 10 presentation 24 years ago, I told the story about how I came to Boise State. My mother and I chose Boise State because the political science department gave me a scholarship. Now, I had scholarship offers from many different schools, public and private. Some of them people might put on the fancier list. But I knew I wanted to study political science, and the political science department specifically at Boise State came to me and gave me a scholarship to come study it here. $300. In 1986, $300 started my college career at Boise State. When I told that story at my top 10 induction ceremony, afterwards, the vice president of student affairs came up to me and he said, "Now, Kevin," he said, "never forget that you came to Boise State and you accomplished all this and you started your career on all that you're going to accomplish in your professional life, all because somebody else gave some of their money so you could get a $300 scholarship." I promise you I didn't forget. In fact, the first week I started work at Boise State, I went to the foundation and said, "Give me a payroll deduction form." For the last 13 years, every 2 weeks that I get paid, some students at Boise State get more scholarship money. Maybe even some of you. So, next month at commencement, Dr. Custra is going to bestow upon you your bachelor's degree. And he's going to say that it comes with all of the rights and responsibilities thereto. So, here's one of the rights he's going to give you. He's going to say that for the rest of your life, well, he won't say this. He's going to give you the right, and I'm going to tell you what it is. You have the right for the rest of your life to stand up and say, "Yes, indeed, I am a graduate of Boise State University. I am a top 10 scholar of Boise State University. I'm a proud member of the Bronco family." That's one of the rights you get next month. And now, I'm going to give you one of the responsibilities that comes with the other side of it. Here's the responsibility with which I charge you. For the rest of your life, Never forget that you are a graduate of Boise State University. Never forget that you earned that top 10 scholar. And never forget, you're a proud member of the Bronco family. Congratulations.